everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session, Natural Disasters and the Effects on Nonprofits. My name is Christy, and I am a Customer Success Specialist with Tax 990, which is an IRS e-file provider for the filing of the Form 990 series. Please note, we are not tax advisors and we will not be providing tax advice or discussing your specific filing requirements. The information we are providing today is intended for educational and general information purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional tax, legal, or accounting advice, and we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified tax professional or legal advisor to address your specific concerns or circumstances. We want to take a moment and tell you that our hearts are with those that have been impacted by recent natural disasters. In the wake of these devastating events, we extend our deepest sympathy to individuals, families, and communities affected, and the tolls on the lives, homes, and livelihood is heartbreaking. As we come together to support recovery and resilience, we hold a space for those who are grieving, rebuilding, and navigating the difficult road ahead. Natural disasters and the effect on nonprofits. Natural disasters ranging from hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and global pandemics pose a significant risk to all sectors of society. Nonprofits often serve as the frontline responders in times of crisis. They face unique vulnerabilities, and these organizations must not only protect their own operation, but also rise to meet the dramatically increased community needs during and after a disaster. The dual responsibility places enormous pressure on limited resources and requires careful planning and flexibility and resilience. According to the National Centers for Environmental Information, 2023 saw a 28 separate billion-dollar climate and weather disasters in the U.S. alone. Nonprofits are often on the front lines of these responses, providing critical services such as shelter, food distribution, healthcare, and emotional support. Yet despite their crucial role, 60% of nonprofits report not having a formal disaster plan in place, leaving them at risk for operational disruption and reduce the effectiveness when disaster strikes. Operational impacts on nonprofits. Natural disasters can disrupt nonprofits' operations in a profound and immediate way. First and foremost is the physical and infrastructure damage. Natural disasters have an immediate and devastating impact on the physical spaces that nonprofits rely on to serve their community. Offices, shelter, food pantries, community centers, storage facilities may be severely damaged or completely destroyed. Floodwaters can ruin equipment and vital records, and fires can level entire buildings. Even if the structure remains standing, they may become unsafe and inaccessible due to mold, debris, or structural instability. Beyond structural damage, essential utilities such as power, water, internet, HVAC systems are often disrupted. Power outages can halt day-to-day operations, and while flooded roads or blocked highways can prevent staff and volunteers and supplies from reaching those in need, these breakdowns in basic infrastructures often force nonprofits to either pause or significantly alter their program at the time when their services are needed the most. The impact can be long-term and in some cases irreversible. According to FEMA, approximately 40% of small businesses, including nonprofits, never reopen after a disaster due to extensive infrastructure damage, the loss of physical assets. This is a stark statistic, underscores the importance of both physical preparedness and operational resilience. Service disruptions. When natural disasters strike, the core mission of a nonprofit serving the community can be thrown into disarray. Programs that depend on routine schedules or in-person interaction are often the first to be interrupted. Educational workshops, counseling sessions, after-school programs, senior care, and healthcare clinics may be suspended for days, weeks, or even longer. These pauses don't just inconvenience the participants, they can result in lasting setbacks, especially for vulnerable populations who rely on these services for stability and support. Outreach services like meal distribution, mobile health clinics, or shelter operations are also frequently impacted. Staff and volunteers may be unable to reach service sites due to road closures or safety hazards. In some cases, these people that nonprofits are trying to serve have been displaced and making outreach even more complex and logistically challenging. Supply chains are another major point of failure during and after disasters. Disruptions in transportation, communication networks can delay or entirely cut off access to essential supplies such as food, clean water, hygiene kits, medical supplies, and other critical resources. Local suppliers may often be affected as well, and reducing inventory availability at the time of increased demand. For nonprofits that rely on regular donations or delivery, this breakdown can have severe consequences on their ability to respond to both ongoing and emergency needs. Human resource impact. Natural disasters don't just damage buildings, they deeply affect people who power the nonprofit organizations. Staff and volunteers are often part of the same community being impacted, and they may be facing evacuation, home loss, injury, or trauma, seeing their neighbors or families suffer. And as a result, they may be physically unable to report to work or emotionally unprepared to engage with clients, especially in this high-stress environments. Evacuation orders, health hazards, and damage to infrastructures can prevent volunteers, who are often the lifeblood of a nonprofit's organization's operations, from even showing up. For many organizations, especially those running on lean staff, the sudden loss of volunteer capacity can bring programs to a halt. Long-term volunteers may step away to care for their own families or recover from personal losses. And even when staff are present, emotionally and psychological tolls are significant. Nonprofit workers, particularly those on the front lines, may experience secondary traumas as they support disaster victims while simultaneously processing their own grief and anxiety. Chronic exposure to crisis situations without adequate mental health support can lead to emotional burnout, compassion fatigue, and in some cases, permanent staff turnover. Leaders too may struggle as they shoulder the dual burden of organizational recovery and staff well-being. This impact is not hypothetical, it's measurable. After Hurricane Harvey, nearly 70% of nonprofit staff surveyed in affected regions reported that being personally impacted by the disaster and unable to work at full capacity. This underscores a key vulnerability. Nonprofits cannot serve others effectively unless their own teams are protected, supported, and resilient. Investing in staff wellness, mental health support, flexible work arrangements, cross-training for critical roles can mitigate these human resource challenges when disaster strikes. Financial stress. Natural disasters place nonprofit organizations under enormous financial pressure, often overnight. Fundraising events that organizations depend on, such as galas, given days, marathons, or community campaigns are frequently canceled or indefinitely postponed due to safety concerns, infrastructural damage, or shift in public attention. These events often represent a significant portion of a nonprofit's annual revenue, and losing them without warning can create immediate cash shortfalls. At the same time, individual and corporate donors may redirect their giving to personal recovery efforts or immediate emergency response funds. While some organizations, particularly those directly involved in disaster relief, may see temporary spikes in donations, others that provide critical but less viable services such as education, the arts, or advocacy often see significant declines in unrestricted fundings. Disasters also demand a fast and flexible response that rarely aligns with the pre-existing budgets organizations may need to secure temporary housing, purchase emergency supplies, repair damaged facilities, or provide hazard pay for frontline staff. All expenses that were not planned for. Without robust emergency reserves, many nonprofits are forced to dip into operating funds or take on debt to meet urgent needs. Cash flow becomes another major challenge. Even when grant funding is promised, delays in disbursements or complicated reimbursement processes can leave organizations waiting weeks or months for the funds they need now. Government relief programs, while are helpful, often come with complex application processes or stringent eligibility requirements that smaller nonprofits struggle to navigate. The financial shocks are not theoretical. They are backed by data. During the first year of COVID-19 pandemic, 57% of nonprofits reported a decrease in revenue, even as demand for their services increased. While COVID-19 was a prolonged crisis, the same financial strain occurs in natural disasters, just in more concentrated time frame. This results in the results is the same, a nonprofit being asked to do more with less. Another area that is impacted is data and communications. In the world where connectivity and data access are vital to operations, a breakdown in communication systems during natural disasters can severely cripple a nonprofit's ability to function. Damage to IT infrastructure such as the server, the database, communication tools. All of this can result in the loss or inaccessibility to critical information, including donor records, client files, and program tracking data. If backups were not stored securely offsite or in the cloud, this data loss can be irreversible and threaten compliance, continuity, and credibility. Even when data systems are intact, limited access to internet, electricity, mobile networks can make it nearly impossible to communicate with staff, clients, volunteers, funders, and the broader public. This communication blackout hinders everything from coordination, emergency responses, and checking on employee safety to sending donor updates and receiving real-time community feedback. For organizations that had not previously invested in remote work capabilities or cloud-based systems, the disruption is even more pronounced. Without contingency systems in place like VPNs, cloud document access, or mobile-friendly platforms, staff are unable to work off-site when offices are damaged or inaccessible. This can completely shut down operations, particularly nonprofits in rural or under-resourced areas. Public trust and organizational resilience are also at stake. In the absence of clear and timely communications, supporters and stakeholders may be left in the dark about the organization's status or needs. Missed fundraising opportunities, delayed response efforts, confusion among clients are all common consequences of communication breakdowns during crisis. To mitigate these risks, nonprofits must prioritize IT disaster recovery planning, a secure cloud storage, redundant communication channels, and staff training on emergency digital operations. A resilient communication strategy means the difference between chaos and coordination in the critical hours and days following the disaster. The escalating community needs. While nonprofits are working through internal disruptions, staff shortages, financial strains, damaged facilities, they are simultaneously facing a surge in demand for their services. Natural disasters often inflict the greatest harm on society's most vulnerable populations, and as a public system becomes overwhelmed or delayed, nonprofits become the first and sometimes only line of support. The needs in surge in basic needs. In the immediate aftermath of a disaster, basic needs skyrocket. Food banks see long lines. Shelters and transitional housing programs operate beyond capacity. Healthcare providers, including mobile clinics and mental health counselors, are often flooded with new cases and without the staffing or supplies to respond adequately. What was already a high need environment becomes humanitarian crisis. Disasters also displace families, pushing them in precarious living situations. Renters may lose housing with no clear path to relocation, and homeowners face long delays for repairs. As a result, housing assistance becomes an urgent need, with nonprofits expected to step in quickly, providing everything from housing, emergency housing, to navigating FEMA paperwork. Disasters don't discriminate. Many individuals who were previously self-sufficient find themselves in need of help, sometimes for the very first time. This brings entirely new populations into the orbit of local nonprofits. Small business owners who lost their livelihoods, middle-income families who were uninsured, elderly residents without caregivers, and these groups may not be familiar with how to access services and placing additional strains on nonprofits' communication intakes and outreach efforts. The numbers tell a powerful story. Following the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, Feeding America reported a 60% increase in food bank usage nationwide, not just state level, nationwide. While COVID was a global long-term event, localized natural disasters often produce similar spikes in the need, just compressed into shorter timeframes with fewer resources and less public attention. Health and emotional support. In the wake of natural disasters, the need for physical and emotional care surges, often exceeding what public systems can provide. Nonprofits, particularly those in the health and human services and community development sectors, become essential providers of trauma-informed care, medical assistance, and emotional support. Raising demand for mental health and grief support is key. The emotional toll of a disaster can be profound and long-lasting. Individuals and families may be grieving lost loved ones, homes, jobs, and their sense of safety and stability. Children and seniors are especially vulnerable to emotional distress during trauma events. In response, nonprofits are often called upon to provide or coordinate trauma counseling, crisis intervention, and grief support services. Faith-based organizations, youth development nonprofits, mental health providers may all see an increase in demand for such things as grief counseling, mental support, trauma-informed care for children and families, support groups for disaster survivors and first responders, outreach to unhoused or displaced population facing mental health crisis. Without adequate support, emotional trauma can lead to long-term consequences, including depression, anxiety, sadly, substance abuse, and even suicide, particularly in communities already struggling with access to behavioral health services. Nonprofits mobilizing medical response. Nonprofits focus on healthcare, whether it's clinics, public health organizations, or mobile services providers, often pivot to meet critical medical needs in the disaster zone, and this may include setting up mobile health units in the area where the clinics or hospitals are closed, providing triage for injured or chronic conditions exacerbated by the disaster, distributing essential medications and medical supplies, or coordinating vaccine clinics and public health education during outbreaks that may follow, such as mold-related respiratory illnesses, waterborne diseases, or COVID and flu transmission within shelters. For medically underserved communities, these nonprofit-led services can be life-saving, especially when federal and state emergency systems are delayed or overstretched. Emergency response and coordination. In the critical hours and days following a natural disaster, many nonprofits play a key role by integrating into the broader emergency response framework. This often involves becoming part of an incident command system, or an ICS, a standardized, coordinated approach to disaster, which is managed by FEMA, the Red Cross, your local governments, or other agencies. And working within an ICS, it helps the nonprofit align their efforts with official response plans, enabling a better resource allocation, reducing overlaps, and ensuring that the needs of affected communities are met effectively as possible. One of the biggest challenges nonprofits face during emergency response is the need for rapid scalability. Logistic operations such as warehousing, transportation, and distribution of food, water, hygiene kits, clothing, other essential supplies must expand quickly and sometimes overnight. To meet a sudden and overwhelming surge in demand, this requires flexible staff and volunteer management, a strong partnership with suppliers and other nonprofits, and a contingency plan that can be activated immediately. Equally important is clear, consistent communications with clients and the public. In disaster situations, uncertainty is high and misinformed information can spread quickly. So nonprofits must provide timely updates about available sources, eligibility criteria, location for aid, and safety precautions. And managing expectations is crucial to maintaining trust and minimizing frustrations among those seeking help. Effective communication also includes coordinating with local media, social networks, and community leaders to ensure messages reach a diverse population, including those with limited English proficiency or disabilities. By participating actively in emergency coordination efforts, nonprofits not only enhance their overall disaster response, but also strengthen their own capacity for future crises. So what is the long-term impact on missions and sustainabilities for nonprofits? Program shifts. Natural disasters often force nonprofits to pivot their programs, sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanent, to address urgent disaster reliefs and recovery needs. Organizations that traditionally focus on areas like education, the arts, or community development may find themselves relocating staff and funding and resources to emergency shelters, the food distribution centers, or even housing assistance. While this shift helps meet the immediate community needs, it can also mean that core mission activities are delayed, scaled back, or deprioritized. For example, an organization dedicated to youth mentorship might suspend regular programming to run disaster case management or trauma counseling. These changes can last weeks, months, or even years, depending on the scale and the duration of the disaster. This realignment can challenge nonprofits' identity, the stakeholders' expectations. Donors, board members, and clients may question the organization's direction and sustainability if the mission focus shifts dramatically. Additionally, securing funding for emergency response work, especially if it falls outside the organization's usual scope, may require new partnerships and grant strategies. Donor landscape changes. Following a natural disaster, the donor landscape often shifts dramatically. Many individual and corporate donors redirect their giving toward immediate disaster relief efforts, channeling funds to organizations involved in food distribution, shelter, medical aid, and rebuilding. While this surge in generosity is vital, it also creates an intense competition among nonprofits, both disaster responders and others whose mission may not directly be related to the disaster, but who still need to support the support to continue their work. As attention and funding focus on recovery, nonprofits outside of their disaster relief arena may face significant challenges securing donations, grants, and sponsorship. This shift can destabilize long-term fundraising plans and put core programs at risk. Additionally, maintaining ongoing donor engagement is crucial during and after a disaster. Nonprofits that struggle to communicate regularly with their supporters due to operational disruption or resource constraints may experience lack in trust and diminished giving once the immediate crisis subsides. A telling statistic from the Centers of Disease highlights a critical gap. Despite the enormous cost associated with disaster response and recovery, only 3% of total disaster-related funding is allocated to preparedness. This imbalance underscores the urgent need for nonprofits and donors alike to invest in a proactive planning to reduce the impact of future disasters. Organizational stability. Natural disasters can seriously threaten a nonprofit's long-term stability. When staff face personal hardship, increased workloads, financial uncertainty, retaining talented employees becomes a significant challenge. Lower morale, burnout, or the inability to maintain competitive salaries can lead to high turnovers when just experienced staff was just needed. In this environment, leadership succession planning becomes essential. Organizations must prepare for scenarios where key personnel, executive directors, program managers, or finance leaders may be unavailable due to disaster-related displacements, illness, or stress. And without clear plans, leadership gaps can lead to organizational paralysis during critical recovery periods. In several cases, some nonprofits may find that financial losses, decline in support, and operational disruptions make it impossible to continue independently. And this can lead to difficult but necessary decisions around mergers, partnerships, or sadly, even closures. While painful, such actions may preserve some level of mission delivery and the community impact through stronger and combined resources. Proactive investment in staff's well-being, the leadership development, and financial resilience is critical to maintain organizational stability amid and after the disaster. Reputational risk and public trust. In the aftermath of a disaster, how a nonprofit responds can significantly impact its public image and community trust. A poorly coordinated or slow response may attract negative media coverage or social media criticism and even public frustration. This can erode confidence not only in the organization's disaster efforts, but also in the overall ability to fulfill the organization's mission. Controversially, nonprofits that prioritize transparent communications, provide timely updates, and deliver effective and well-organized efforts can strengthen their credibility and deepen the relationship with donors, volunteers, clients, and a broader community. Demonstrating the accountability and compassion during a crisis builds lasting goodwill that supports future fundraising, volunteer engagement, and mission success. Having a proactive reputation management through clear messaging and communication engagement and collaboration with trusted partners. This helps nonprofits maintain the public trust even amid challenging circumstances. Filing extension and their impact on nonprofits. Natural disasters often prevent nonprofits from meeting their critical administrative and regulatory deadlines, such as filing their IRS Form 990, grant reports, audits, or state registrations. In such cases, organizations may seek filing extension, but be careful. This comes with some benefits and some risks. Don't forget that Tax 990 is here to help you get those extensions filed quickly by accessing your Tax 990 account from any computer or mobile device. So as long as those IT guys do their end and get your communications up, you can file your extension from your cell phone. As long as you have access to your organization's EIN, because the IRS extension is an automatic extension. Why extensions are needed during disasters. During natural disasters, nonprofits often face significant operational disruptions that can make meeting usual deadlines difficult, if not impossible. Staff may be unavailable due to personal evacuation, injury, or displacement, and the office may be physically inaccessible because of the damage or safety concerns. Critical systems, including computers and communication networks, may be down, further complicating the workflow. In some cases, essential financial records and documents may be lost and damaged or inaccessible, delaying the preparedness and submission of required reports or tax filings. Additionally, key external partners such as CPAs, accountants, or consultants may themselves be impacted by the disaster, limiting their ability to provide timely assistance. Most importantly, nonprofit leaders must often shift focus to emergency service delivery and prioritizing the immediate need of the community over administrative tasks. You're focused on people, not paperwork. This redirection of resources underscores the necessity for filing an extension and the deadline flexibility to accommodate extraordinary circumstances without penalizing the organizations working under extreme stress. So what types of extensions are available? The IRS Form 990, you can file the Form 8868 to request a 6-month extension. The IRS Disaster Relief Notice automatic extends deadlines for federally declared areas. You'll need to check with your local state for state extensions that are also extended due to the disaster-related issues. Unfortunately, there are some consequences of filing extensions. Delayed transparency. For organizations such as watchdog organizations that rely on timely filings to evaluate nonprofits, the delay may raise concerns in potential donors or grants. So if you're not filing your 990 on time and you need that 990 to qualify for these grants, filing the extension would hinder your grants. Potential funding delays. Some grants require proof of recent filings, as I stated, and those late reports can delay the disbursements of effective eligibility. The public's perception. Profiles on platforms like GuideStar may show late filing. And this could be perceived as a sign of disorganization. Not that it doesn't imply or relay that there's a national disaster in your area. All they see is that late filing. Unfortunately, IRS penalties up to $50,000 if extensions are not properly filed, and if it's an ongoing, like the pandemic COVID-19, if you've not filed for 3 consecutive years, you could have your exempt status revoked. So the best practice is to be proactively communicated with stakeholders about any delays, maintain documented disaster-related challenges, compliance calendar, adopt a cloud-based system for accessibility so that you don't have to worry about getting into that physical office. You can access it from any device. And you can also seek professional support. Building resilience and how nonprofits can prepare. Emergency preparedness planning. Nonprofits should develop and regularly update comprehensive business continuity plans that outline how to maintain operations during various disaster scenarios. These plans should include detailed steps for protecting physical assets, data, personnel, records. Conducting drills and simulations will help staff and volunteers practice responding protocols, identify the gaps. It's going to improve your readiness. Establishing remote access and backup systems ensure that critical work can continue even if the offices are damaged or inaccessible. Financial safeguards. Maintaining emergency operating reserves is essential for weather-bearing under unsuspected disasters or disruptions. Research shows that nonprofits with at least 3 to 6 months of operating reserves are 70% more likely to survive a major disruption. Additionally, secure and flexible funding sources, such as an unrestricted grant or donor-designated emergency funds, provides financial agility during crisis. Ensuring comprehensive disaster insurance coverage protects organizations from costly losses related to property damage, building, business interruptions, and liability. Technology and data protection. This is essential in today's world. Adopting a cloud-based system allows nonprofits to store data securely and access critical files from anywhere, even if local infrastructure is compromised. Implementing emergency communication platforms such as a mass notification system, text alerts, or social media challenge enables rapid, reliable outreach to staff, volunteers, and clients. And regularly back up the vital documents to secure off-site location reduces the risk of data loss during natural disasters. Community and government partnerships. Building strong relationship with your local emergency response agencies enhances coordinations and response sharing during a crisis. Nonprofits should actively participate in the local disaster planning committees to stay informed and influence response efforts. Forming a mutual aid agreement with other organizations, establish a framework for sharing staff or supplies and facilities when disaster strikes, and creating a collaborative network of support will help you. Staff and volunteer training. I know we've talked about staff and volunteering training in our other webinars, and how on onboarding all staff should be trained and updated. Staff and emergency volunteers, any volunteers should be trained on emergency procedures that ensure everyone knows their roles and their responsibilities during a disaster, providing a psychological first aid. Training helps frontline workers support clients and meet each other's emotionally high stress situations. Maintaining a ready roster of trained volunteers who can be quickly mobilized strengthens response capacity and builds organizations' resilience. Don't just do it once. Train and have updates. If you can do it quarterly for reviews. Your practice. Case examples. Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Local nonprofits were overwhelmed by the scale and the speed of the disaster. Faith-based organizations played a key role in sheltering displaced residents and coordinating relief. The crisis highlighted the critical importance of a contingency planning and intra-agency coordination. The California wildfires. Environmental and animal welfare nonprofits were deeply impacted in managing evacuation and rescue efforts. Fundraising success was closely tied to real-time communication of the impact and the needs via social media and other news outlets. And nonprofits faced operational challenges due to air quality and infrastructure damage. COVID-19 pandemic. Arts and education nonprofits experienced significant revenue declines as events and programs were canceled. Health and hunger-focused organizations saw unprecedented demand for services. Digital transformation, including virtual programming and online fundraising, became essential for survival and outreach. The Texas floods. Environmental and animal welfare nonprofits were again heavily affected, with rescue and rehabilitation efforts intensifying. Food banks are being faced dramatic increase for food and supply. Faith-based and volunteer groups experiencing surges in services requests that supply hubs and feeding stations and shelters. Fundraising success was linked to transparency and timely communication of real-time impact. How can we help, or how can you help? Donate to trusted funds, support organizations with deep community ties and proven impact, such as the community foundations of Texas Heal Country, Carr County Flood Relief Funds, Lift Funds, and others providing direct aids to those specific affected areas. Volunteer on the ground. Lend your time and skills by volunteer with nonprofits, faith-based groups, churches that are actively involved in the relief efforts, whether distributing supplies or assisting at shelters. Verify before you give. Be sure to support legitimate fundraisers by checking for verification through trusted sources such as the Better Business Bureau, GoFundMe charity pages, and local news outlets such as NBC or DFW. And advocate for systematic change. Help build community resilience by supporting policies and initiatives that improve flood warning systems and infrastructures and emergency preparedness at local and state levels. So in conclusion, natural disasters challenge more than just physical infrastructures. They test the strength and flexibility and integrity of an organization's internal system and its relationship with the community. For nonprofits, these critical moments reveal how well prepared they are to adapt, lead, and sustain operations under pressure. While filing extensions can provide essential relief during emergencies, they must be handled with care and accountability. Mismanagement, managing deadlines, or failing to communicate transparency can jeopardize credibility with donors, regulators, and communities that they serve. Organizations that invest in a robust administrative process, keep their emergency preparedness plans current, and prioritize a clear and timely communication during crisis not only survive, they lead. Such nonprofits become trusted, resilient anchors for their communities, earning confidence through transparency and thoughtful action when it matters the most. So now we're going to take a brief Q&A. Please remember that if we do not get to your question today, or if you have a question later, you can reach out to us at our support at 704-839-2321. We will be providing a copy of this webinar to everyone who was registered, and it will be made available on our website as well. So let me see if we have any questions. It looks like Mark has one. It says, what emergency funding sources are available to nonprofits? And that's a very good question. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, it is available for public assistance programs and individual assistance programs. You can reach out to them at fema.gov for more information on assistance. There is also Small Business Administration's disaster loans at the SBA.gov. This is for economic injury disaster loans available to nonprofits to cover lost revenue or operating expenses due to a declared disaster, and also physical disaster loans for repairing or replacing damaged property, equipment, and inventory, things like that. Also, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, at HUD.gov. It's for community development, block grants, disaster recovery. These grants are distributed to local governments, which may be then subgranted funds to nonprofits, addressing housing and economic recovery and infrastructure. State and local government sources also have state emergency management agencies often offer disaster relief grants or coordinate distribution of federal funds. And then local municipalities may offer mini grants or emergency stipends for nonprofits involved in direct relief or recovery work. Here is some key components of a nonprofit disaster preparedness plan. It is just a simple steps that you can take. Have an emergency contact list, do a risk assessment, have business continuity plan, evacuation and shelter in place procedures, communication plan, data and record backup, an insurance review, meaning if you're in a building and you have insurance on your building and your equipment, review your insurance policy, make sure that they're up to date. Have emergency supply checklist. Have the emergency supplies readily available and not in the back of the storage building under all your contributions, all your tables and your supplies. Have this stuff readily available. And then again, do training and drills. You're only ready as you are prepared. The national, regional, there's also the Red Cross Community Partnership may work with local nonprofits in disasters response areas. Faith-based missions also aligned. So a lot of churches, local churches, will be out working with disaster preparedness and readiness, and also providing the much needed instant help with food and supplies. So it looks like Owen has a question, and we kind of covered that. I'm going to go a little bit deeper. He's asking what should be included in a nonprofit's disaster preparedness plan. We had talked about some of those key components, but you should also have this. I would think the most beneficial would be make sure that your insurance is up to date, data recovery backup for your records. It is vital that you either have an offsite or a cloud backup so that it can be accessed from the work's iPad. If you have work from home capabilities via a laptop, make sure that the financial records and your donor client database and your insurance policy, even personnel files, all of this, make sure all of that is updated. Make sure your insurance is reviewed for property and liability. Also, if it covers business interruptions and cybersecurity, you need to communicate with your insurance agency to see if this is what is covered and what is not, and who to contact for claims. I would also highly recommend a emergency supply list, not just the list, but have the first aids, have the flashlights and the batteries, non-perishable foods and waters, phone chargers, two-way radios if need be, and also an item that is a lot of times overlooked is PPE, personal protection equipment, if it's as little as gloves and masks. If you're in flood areas, make sure you have boots, stuff like that. And I do highly recommend, as we've drilled in constantly, not even just in training from the prior webinars, but training and drills for any contingency. If it's natural disaster or fraud, have that in place and practice, practice, practice. And then have a post-disaster recovery plan in place. Do a damage assessment procedures, provide reopening timelines, have emotional and mental health support for staff and clients, and then steps for filing insurance and applying for aid. Haley asks, how should nonprofits balance the immediate disaster response with long-term mission stability? That's a very good question, Haley. It's going to be tricky, but you're going to have to stick to your core mission, even in crisis. Before responding to a disaster, ask, does this response align with our mission and our expertise? So we know that you may have to shift, but if you're not already in certain areas that are being requested, so if you're a nonprofit who strictly provides grants for college education, you're not going to be able to shift quickly to providing food and medicines and stuff like that. So avoid mission drift by partnering with other agencies better suited for the emergency roles rather than overstretching your team. I could recommend activating an emergency response framework. Have a pre-approved emergency protocol that outlines what your actions your organization will take or will not take. Resource thresholds for activating a response. And also temporary versus permanent program adjustments. Are you going to make a complete shift? Is it going to be a 2-year plan? For instance, like COVID-19, a lot of nonprofits shifted because everything was virtual. The country was shut down. Allocate resources with intentions. Use separate emergency fundings pools. So grants, reserves, donor appeals to avoid draining core program budgets. And apply a time limit on staffing strategies like disaster staff for task force, temporary staff or volunteers, so that long-term programs can continue to operate. I would also encourage your board for strategic oversight. Ensure that your board plays a role in approving major shifts in programming, budgeting, or partnerships during the disaster. They can help weigh in short-term versus long-term strategy and risk tolerance. And I know we've said it, but communicate transparently with your stakeholders, with everyone. Build a resilience into your planning, and use disaster moments to reinforce your mission. Use storytelling and reporting to show your response that supports your outreach and goals. For example, a food pantry responding to a hurricane can highlight its core mission of fighting food insecurity, not just disaster relief. So Tax 990, that looks like for today is all of the questions we have. We hope that you have found some helpful solutions. Tax 990 has put a lot of work into providing info with you for the best resources. You can access that on our knowledge base to get a quick answer to common questions or related filing process, form information, filing requirements. You can also check out our YouTube channel. This webinar will also be posted on our channel shortly. And if you have any, if you're filing your 990 or if you need to file an extension due to a natural disaster, you can reach out to us at our website, tax990.com. And we're available Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live support at 704-839-2321. You can also send us an email to support@tax990.com. or we have a live chat on our website at tax990.com. Again, thank you so very much for joining me today. It has been my pleasure. And again, I hope that this information found you well, and our thoughts are with those that have been affected by natural disasters recently. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you. Have a good day.